Dr. Blay Whitby.
Good evening, thanks for inviting me. My name's Blay Whitby. My field is technology ethics, specialising in AI and robotics. And in case you think, oh yeah, another bandwagon climber, I'll just quietly point out that I don't particularly want to talk about ChatGPT. I'm highly bored with that. In 1988, I published a book on the ethics of AI, which said this is a powerful technology, it'll change society in many ways. We've got to take some steps now to prevent it falling into the wrong hands. It's now 2023, it has fallen into the wrong hands. Enough said. The most important thing on that slide is the question mark. It got me into a lot of trouble. There's a learned version of this talk, a paper with that title, and I was emphatically told many times by copy editors of increasing seniority at MIT Press that titles could not be questions. That's some sort of rule. However, it is a question. It's a question to you, right? I want you to think about whether or not you want to head in this direction. I also had a lot of trouble getting the first sentence of the paper past the copy editor. Apologies to any Jane Austen fans, because I've ripped off the first sentence of Pride and Prejudice. But as a compensation, I can tell you things about Jane Austen you didn't know, including the name of the 21st century equivalent of Jane Austen, a brilliant young writer, coming up later in the talk. See if you spot that. They said, you cannot possibly be asserting this, and I had to write a footnote. Right, saying, no, it's a joke. In fact, it's a rip-off of Jane Austen's joke. However, right, have I set up a straw man? No. People have decided, commercial interests have decided, that you do want a robotic companion. Now, it would be unethical for me, as an ethicist, to actually give any names, wouldn't it? So let me give one. David Levy is a London-based AI entrepreneur. In this book, which you can read if you like, it's not badly written, but the most interesting claim, I can't remember the exact page number now, it's about 168, I think. The most interesting claim is, and it's illustrated on the cover for you, he says that by 2050, and in my field it's always good to have a definite date, by 2050, progressive states, he doesn't say which ones those are, but progressive states will recognise marriage to robots. God. Now, yeah, I read that and I thought, I'm not totally sure that that's going to work, but there have been lots of changes in the rules for marriage, the definition of marriage. Happy to discuss definition of marriage because I live in Brighton, which does the ambiguity rather well. The rather strangely shaped building that's on the city logo was built by the Prince Regent, or modified by the Prince Regent, for his mistress stroke secret wife. You tell me your definition of marriage, then we can decide which Mrs. Fitzherbert was, but I'm from Brighton, I can live with mistress stroke secret wife. Anyway, Levy says this. So I'll discuss the claim in more detail. The first thing to say is science fiction has made robot companions look rather more attractive than they actually are in reality. It's the easiest thing in the world to get a human actor to dress up and pretend to be a robot. This is not a robot. This is a human pretending to be a robot. And even my personal favourite, the Buffy bot, is not a robot. It's a human actor pretending to be a robot. On the other hand, this is a robot. This is the Raytheon Tomahawk cruise missile, one of the most successful robots of our time. And aside from the strange-looking guy at the back, these are robots. Right? This is me in the robot lab at Sussex. Undergraduates are very disappointed when they see this is what real robots are like. This large one just in front of me here was a drawbot. It was supposed to learn how to do creative pictures. Supposed to, I say. Yet another project that failed. But that's kind of where the technology is. Right? The Japanese have a very positive valuation for robots, and they go a lot for actroids, which are essentially talking mannequins. Right? And they do a job at a car show, which I believe, if it's done by a human, the role is called spokesmodel. Isn't this a wonderful Toyota? Right. Notice I'm not queasy about naming names. This was the prettiest one I could find. If you look very carefully, you'll see that the hands are in a kind of awkward position. Don't look quite right. And if you look at the videos of these things, you may experience some revulsion. Where you are is called the uncanny valley. This is a technical thing you need to know about. Again, recognised by a Japanese puppeteer back in 1970 originally, Masahiro Mori. And essentially, the uncanny valley is as something gets very close to, but not quite the same as a human, you experience a deep revulsion. And it's hypothesized that this is because you're genetically predisposed to be repulsed by people who move in a very strange way, the zombie gait and so on, because that would protect you. And you'll also notice that the Japanese robot manufacturers know this only too well. Right? The Sony Aibo and so on is dog-like, but doesn't try and resemble a real dog. They know very well not to go too close and get into the uncanny valley. Now, if you're interested, because people are having sex with robots all over the world tonight, I don't want to say anything more about that. If you're curious about how they do it, how they deal with this problem, you need to catch me after the talk, right? Because I want to talk about love tonight, okay? Oh, and apologies for the titles on my slides. I was, many years ago, disciplined. I was threatened with dismissal for putting the words to popular songs on slides, because this would bring the university into disrepute. Right? But I am Blay Whitby, so I put them on the slides as often as I can, having been told to do that. As I say to my students, you see, I'm an ethicist, I say, those in authority are merely in authority. We get to say whether or not they're right. Okay, so I don't think they are right in this case. So this is, so all you need is love, you know, it's Lennon on one of his hippie trips. Right, can you love a robot? Right, now I'm convinced by Levy's argument, you can. You could become so familiar with a piece of technology, maybe some of you have had this experience. Right? Yes, you could fall in love with a robot. I'm sure people could do it. Okay, so probably. But I reserve the right to say, and this is important, so you're pretty strange then. This is a quote from the 21st century Jane Austen, Susan Nixon. Right? It's the musical special from her great comedy of manners. And it's, again, there's a serious message in this, you're pretty strange. Because if you did have bizarre tastes, interests and so on, before the days of the internet, you would just be the weirdest person in Eastbourne, end of discussion. However, the magic of the internet is that it will put you in contact with the other 6 people on the planet who share your weirdness. And now you are no longer strange, you've become an oppressed minority. This is a change that you see. Now you may think that's a good change, but that is a change that the technology has brought about. This is something I care about as a technology ethicist. Right? Oh, someone's taking a picture of the screen to try and work out who Susan Nixon is. Well, I can take questions on all this. But yes, you can love a robot. But let's get philosophical, if that's okay. Not too late at night for the difficult philosophical question. Can the robot love you? This is a much more interesting question. Okay? And remember, we're talking about love here, not the other stuff. Right? We're talking about love. Can the robot love you? Well, will a very good simulation do? No T in that question. Right. So, some of you got it. I Whisper Sweet Things, it's Handyman by James Taylor. If you're not spotting all the quotes, I'm bringing myself into disrepute with all these popular songs. It's very, very easy, very easy in modern AI to build a machine, a chatbot, should we say, that will tell you what you want to hear, that will work out what's right for you, Oh, and of course, if you want the Donna Henshaw version that tells you you're a misogynist excuse for a modern man, I can write that program too. Right? It's not difficult. And do you all know about the Eliza effect?
No.
Well, you need to. Right. In 1965, looked this up this evening, in 1965, a computer scientist, one of the earliest computer scientists called Joseph Weissenbraun, wrote a program for a joke. Got that? It was a joke program. The program was called Eliza, in block capitals like that, after Eliza Doolittle. You see, everything goes back to what was before. And it gave the impression of holding a conversation by outputting pieces of text, right? And if you'd mentioned your customers or whatever, and it couldn't work out how to respond, it often twisted what you said, just reversed the word order. It was 1965, it was not very sophisticated, right? And it was the first chatbot. Joseph Weizenbaum became one of the fiercest critics of artificial intelligence because people took his jokes seriously. That's what the Eliza effect is. Right? It's very, very easy to persuade human beings that they're dealing with human agency or intelligence when they're dealing with the very simplest machine. Right? ChatGPT knows nothing, has no connection with the real world. It merely does statistical analysis of text. Right? It's a stochastic parrot. It puts what words would go well next. Right? And it's as amazing to me that people are fooled by this as it is to you. Right? Because way back in the 1990s, we thought that a program to understand natural language would need to know rules of grammar. It would at least need to know subject and object and how to parse sentences and so on. And we put a lot of work into parse trees and things like that. Turns out it's not true at all. You just need to make a probabilistic judgment of what words occur together. Wow. And if you can search all the internet, that'll do. Right? That gives the illusion of conversation. The Eliza effect, very powerful, because humans are predisposed to think they are dealing with an intelligent entity when they're not. Right? So this is a problem we've got. So, can the robot love you? Let's look at the definition of love. What's really interesting, if you're a philosopher, is love is not something that's constant across societies, definitely not constant across history. So here are some important stages in the definition of love. Symposium, anybody read it? By Plato. You must read it. I can't tell you what's in it, because if I were to publish that now, the Sun readers would burn my house down. Does it matter to you? Hey, have you ever heard of a platonic relationship? Well, where do you think that comes from? Now, symposium, I was in trouble at school, I translated it as piss up, right? What it is, here's a picture from the vase, it's an all-male drinks party, right? Some of the pictures show wine being served in flagons there by naked slaves of both sexes, often ending in communal sex on the floor, right? It's Athenian, middle-class Athenian houses had a room that was only for men, and that was where a symposium would take place, and everybody would get well and truly drunk. You know, I rest my case with my translation, right? I think it's quite a moderate translation. Why does it mean an academic gathering? Well, in Plato's symposium, right, I believe the opening line is, let us send the flute girls away and discuss philosophy. And what they discuss is the definition of love. There are a number of definitions of love in there, including Plato's, but our modern use of a platonic relationship is not the same as the one in the original text. You must read the original text. It's available online, it's a classic, and there's lots of good stuff in it. The Greeks had 3 words for love, you know them all really. There was eros, which is sexual love, philia, which is family love or brotherhood, and agape. And agape is peace and love, man, right? It's love for all humanity. So when Paul in the Gospels writes about love as a Christian virtue, the word he's using, because he's writing in Greek, is agape, right? Not eros or philia. Interesting. Anyway, so that's, I've taken dated romance from Chaucer. You don't have to, but it becomes this romantic ideal of doing brave deeds for maidens, you know, the occasional bit of dragon slaying, that sort of thing. Very influenced in Northern Europe. And then I've thrown in Lord Zuckerberg's empire, roughly 2005. Why do I think that's important in the definition of love? Well, he's already changed the definition of the word friend. See, for someone old like me, a friend is someone who calls you at 2 o'clock in the morning and you say without hesitation, I'm on my way. Now, I put it to you, you couldn't have more than 20 such people in your life. Still less 250 or 2,000. So already this technology has changed the definition of the word friend. If you start taking robot lovers, I think there's a strong chance that the definition of the word love will change. It isn't constant over history. The technology has the power to change it. Does it matter? Well, I think so. But remember, there was a question mark at the beginning of my talk. Science fiction gets in the way. Let me just mention this commercial imperative thing, right? If I stand here and say, hey, I'm a technology ethicist, there's 7.5 billion humans in the world, get a human lover, right? And if you can't get a human lover, maybe we should discuss that as a human problem rather than throwing technology at it. That's fine, but no money changes hands. Right? If, on the other hand, someone like Levy, oops, mustn't mention any names, says he won't call you back, play with human beings, you get nasty diseases, you know, human relationships are difficult. And that's the thing, human relationships are difficult. Right, I go with Roy Orbison on this one, can't I? Love hurts, love scars, love wounds and mars. Any heart not strong or tough enough to take a lot of pain, right? That's the way it is with human relationships, right? But if Levy says, don't bother, human relationships too hard, then I will sell you a robotic companion. You get the key word here, sell? So there may be a commercial imperative at work. I don't think this is going to happen in Britain first. On point in this whole area is Japan. A lot of Japanese young people do find relationships with other people too hard. And I see that as an interesting social problem, not a technology problem. Not a problem that technology needs to solve. Up to you how you see it. I'm just throwing the ideas at you. Right? Not my job to tell you what to think. I'm just pointing out a few little details. Here's another thing. Oh, that's another paper by me. Sometimes it's hard to be a robot. I'm ripping off Tammy Wynette. Right? And that title got me into a lot of trouble too. I'm in such trouble for the things I say. But I put it to you that the answer to this question might very well be someone who wants to do things to their robotic companion that would be illegal or immoral or both, were they to do them to a human being. Just running the idea by you. Right? And I know that people will do nasty things to robots. I know this because they already do. This is GTA 5, by the way. Scene from it, which is and not by any means the most violent of video games. Right? And until recently, the way most people met AI was in the way it got a character out the way when they were shooting at it. So I know people will do nasty things to robots. Does it matter? Well, I'd like a deep discussion on it. It's not a trivial issue. Right? It's something you should be thinking about. It should be a policy issue rather than we just go into it because, you know, Elon Musk thinks we should. Importantly, right, in blocks, I'm not talking science fiction here. This is not mythical future technology. Right? A lot of caring technology is here already. Have I got time to unpack any of these?
Just quickly, yep.
Smart homes are highly automated apartments, typically aimed at those becoming cognitively less able in their advanced years. Very interesting. Are there ethical issues? Yes, of course there are. But they're available now. Right? This is, you know, it's not new. Far from it. Cybertherapy, do you all know about cybertherapy? Right, cut the story short. The World Health Organization has declared depression an epidemic in a number of countries, including this one. The only type of talking therapy that the NHS will fund is called cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, and the only reason they'll fund that and nothing else is because there's decent clinical evidence that it works, and it's not ridiculously expensive and so on. However, Britain and New Zealand, on point in this, also recognise CBT administered by a computer. That's double CBT, CCBT. And guess what? Right, the scientific evidence is that it's nearly as effective as CBT administered by a human. And when I say this to an audience with cognitive therapists in it, I think I'd feel threatened at it, but they don't feel threatened. It is effective, right? Robot nannies, available now. I have to point out it will be illegal under UK law to leave your child in the care of a robot. However, these machines are available from places like South Korea, Singapore and Japan, where they have a more positive evaluation of these things. Right? Again, I've published a paper called The Crying Shame of Robot Nannies, right? Because we don't know the psychological impact of having a child brought up by a robot. If you want to run the experiment, that's your choice, right? But all I'm backing up is I'm not talking science fiction, right? And these things change the meaning of the word care. Right? You tell me whether a robot nanny cares for a child. Right? It all depends on your definition of care. Definitely worth thinking about. What's yet another song title? Tell me off if you like. Right. Does it matter? I think so. Also, I think public attitudes matter. I think a lot of these things are determined by the attitude of the public. So you have to decide whether you're going to let the commercial interests roll over you, or you're actually bothered about these things. That's all I'm saying tonight, is please think about it. Please think about these issues. So it only remains for me to say, if anybody has been, thank you for listening.
Hey, can you say that?